Coming up next on the Holistic Wealth Podcast.
So for decades, resilience was defined as toughness, grit, and bouncing back. But what if that definition has been all wrong? Human beings are not machines. Reboot, get back to work. But human beings are ecosystems, and ecosystems need restoration. So holistic resilience is the ability to recover and reinvent identity after disruption by healing the nervous system, reclaiming agency, and aligning with a life of purpose.
You're listening to the Holistic Wealth Podcast with host Keisha Blair, author of Holistic Wealth and founder of the Institute on Holistic Wealth. And now, here's your host, Keisha Blair.
Welcome to the Holistic Wealth Podcast, and I'm your host, Keisha Blair. And today we're discussing holistic resilience, which I think is a great topic just to segue into this from the last few episodes that we've had, if you've been listening to the last few episodes of the Holistic Wealth Podcast. And just before I get into this topic, just a reminder that the Holistic Wealth Podcast is sponsored by the Institute on Holistic Wealth. And you can check out the website for a range of courses and resources to help you live a holistically wealthy lifestyle. The website is www.instituteonholisticwealth.com. And as I said, you can check out the website for a range of courses and resources to help you live a holistic wealth lifestyle. So today we're talking about holistic resilience and the 21st century resilience framework for that, which is basically holistic wealth and holistic resilience. And so we've been exposed to a definition of resilience that has been rooted in decades old, probably centuries old notions of what resilience is. And of course, since the pandemic, with everyone waking up to what did not work, we need to redefine that. And I started that process when I released the first edition of Holistic Wealth back in 2019. And again, with the expanded and updated edition and the Holistic Wealth workbook. And it's kind of like the impetus behind the formation or the foundation of the Institute on Holistic Wealth. So for decades, resilience was defined as toughness, grit, and bouncing back. But what if that definition has been all wrong? I coined holistic wealth to empower lives after disruption. And today I'm showing you why holistic resilience is the next evolution of resilience itself. So why is the old resilience model failing? Why are those models failing? Well, those resilience models, those old resilience models are rooted in military style frameworks that teach survival, not necessarily thriving. And so even workplace resilience training often focuses on just burnout management. And it's almost like burnout management dressed up as resilience training, because it's just rooted in basically just bouncing back, not necessarily bouncing back better. So even psychological models that focus on mental grit often ignore the nervous system regulation, and of course, our identity. But here's something to consider. The way we treat resilience is as if human beings are machines. Restart, reboot, get back to work. But human beings are ecosystems. We're whole ecosystems. And ecosystems need restoration, not just rebooting. And so I just want to repeat that phrase. Ecosystems need restoration, not just rebooting. So what is holistic resilience? So here's my definition of holistic resilience, and it's rooted in the Holistic Wealth Framework, which is a framework for resilience. So holistic resilience is the ability to recover and reinvent identity after disruption by healing the nervous system, reclaiming agency, and aligning with a life of purpose. And when we talk about identity, so many people are like, well, why do we need to recover and reinvent our identity? Well, you hear further down as I go into the podcast, but life-altering setbacks have a way of crashing our identities. And it's unbelievable how much of our identity suffers after disruption. And so when we talk about identity repatterning, which is something I talk about in Holistic Wealth, that's something that we need to be cognizant of. We need to start from scratch when we're in a period of healing. So here are 3 pillars of the framework: nervous system recovery, which is, and when I say nervous system recovery, I'm talking about the first pillar of holistic resilience and resilience frameworks. So nervous system recovery, which is regulating stress hormones, repairing biological wear and tear. Number 2, identity reinvention, healing from identity collapse. And identity collapse is so important because that's the part that collapses under the weight of life-altering setbacks and life-altering disruptions. So when we talk about identity collapse, we talk about a collapse of the core identity that happens with widowhood. It can happen with divorce. It can happen after caregiving for a loved one. It can happen after the loss of a loved one and grief. And it can happen even after a job loss. All of those life-altering setbacks can cause identity collapse. And when we have identity collapse, we need to have identity repatterning. So let me just go into the 3rd pillar, which is collective empowerment. And collective empowerment is linking resilience to community, culture, and systems. And it's part of the reason why I founded and started Global Holistic Wealth Day and Global Holistic Wealth Week. And just to let you know that for 2026, we're expanding that to Global Holistic Wealth Month, because I think we need an entire month to actually have that fostering of that community resilience and culture and systems. And so I think with having 1 month, we get it more entrenched into the psyche, into our collective psyche, which I think is so needed. So here's something that, in my research for caregiving, and just because I've done a few episodes on caregiving now because of my personal experience with my dad's illness, and if you go back a few episodes, you'll see the different episodes on life after caregiving and reaching 1 billion with the caregiving episode, then you see why this has become so important for me to raise awareness about. So caregivers who provide long-term care shorten their telomeres by up to 9 years, the same biological aging effect as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And so basically what this is saying is that it's a shortened lifespan for caregivers who provide long-term care. So basically they're shortening their lifespan by about 9 to 15 years, the same biological effect as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. 80% of resilience programs don't address the cellular toll. The cellular and biological toll isn't addressed in 80% of resilience programs. So holistic resilience is not just grit. It's biological repair and identity rebirth. When I talk about identity rebirth, I remember when I wrote the viral article in December of 2017, and I spoke with reinvention. I spoke about, if you read the first paragraph of that viral article, you'll see that I spoke about having to reinvent myself. And that's what holistic resilience includes. So when we talk about the art of recovery from disruption, which is something I talk about a lot, and if you just scan the book titles of holistic wealth across the different regions of the world, you'll realize that Art of Recovery from Disruption is the subtitle of the Australian and New Zealand edition, and it's the subtitle that's used in the UK market and in several other markets. If you Google Holistic Wealth, Art of Recovery from Disruption, you'll see several markets actually use that. And the Art of Recovery from Disruption is the mother framework of holistic resilience. That art of recovery or recovery from disruption, that phrase is the mother framework of holistic resilience. And of course, that's rooted in my own story of widowhood at age 31, just 8 weeks after I gave birth. And so that story also throughout the book talks about holistic resilience, right? And so recovery isn't going back, it's going forward. And that's why we have a whole holistic wealth movement that has surpassed 120 million people across the world, because everyone's realizing that we need a new definition of wealth, a new definition of resilience, and it needs to include nervous system and an identity rewired for the future. And when I spoke about rewiring in holistic wealth, all of that's included. So if you don't have a copy of the book, please grab one. And the German edition was just released about 3 weeks ago and has been gaining a lot of momentum in Germany and across Europe. It was hot new releases list on Amazon Germany. So please check that out and share with family and friends if you have family and friends across Europe. So why does the world need holistic resilience now? Well, I think we can all agree that in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have a lot of unresolved collective trauma. And it's ongoing, right? You just need to listen to the news, the shooting this week in the United States. Like there's just so much going on from a mental health perspective, from a financial resilience perspective. There's just so much going on in the world right now that we could all be worried about, and that can cause collective trauma. And even with the caregiving crisis that I mentioned in the last episode, that's an unseen cost on women's health and their economic productivity. And of course, we have other crises going on. There's climate change, there's global uncertainty, there's global economic decline, inflation with people seeing their cost of living increasing and their, net worth eroding. And so by 2030, and, this is just a stat with regards to caregiving, but I'm sure if we look up another stat on burnout in general, it will be kind of the same. So by 2030, caregiving related burnout could cost the global economy $1 trillion annually unless we reframe resilience. When we talk about, again, the holistic wealth movement and building towards that 1 billion, this is critical. And that's why I'm so passionate about building towards that 1 billion so that we don't reach that point where that level of stress and burnout costs the global economy $1 trillion annually. And the only way to do this is for us to reframe resilience and collective healing and to embrace holistic wealth. So I want to get into some practical tools to leave you with so that you can leave this episode if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling like you need recovery after disruption, no matter what the disruption is, whether it's a job loss, a divorce, loss of a spouse, loss of a loved one, grief, life after caregiving. I want to leave you with just 3 quick tools. The first is a quick nervous system reset, and that involves a breath and body scan. And it's so important when we think about nervous system regulation, because some of us, the way we respond to each other, the way we communicate with each other, even our spouses and at home, it's all rooted in trauma. It's all rooted, and our response is rooted in trauma. And if you notice, self-awareness is key here, because if you notice yourself responding out of trauma, and there are key ways to know, right? If it's out of sync with, how you would normally respond, if you're finding yourself more agitated, more angry, that's responding out of trauma. And it matters because the nervous system often gets stuck in flight and freeze. So fight, flight, or freeze mode. So this reset practice helps to shift back into repair, restoration, and into rest. So sit or stand with both feet planted on the ground. And this is just a 2 to 3 minute exercise. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds. Imagine filling your tummy like a balloon. Then hold gently for 2 seconds. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 seconds, like you're blowing out through a straw. And then scan your body from head to toe and notice where the tension is. Is it in your gut, in your shoulders, in your jaw? And as you exhale, imagine sending softness into each area that's tense. And what this does, it resets the stress hormones like cortisol and creates space for identity reflection. And that gets us into the second exercise, which is a journaling prompt. I want you to write this question: who am I becoming after this disruption? And it doesn't matter what the disruption is. And this is why it matters. Adversity tends to rewrite our identity at a biological and psychological level. And without reflection, people risk staying trapped in a before identity that no longer fits. So here's how you use this. So you're going to write for 5 minutes without stopping and start with, before this disruption, I define myself as, and you fill in the blank. During this disruption, I felt like my identity was, and you fill in the blank. And now since the disruption, what am I becoming? I am becoming, and fill in the blank. Circle words that feel alive or surprising, because these are seeds to the new self. And this aligns with holistic resilience's pillar of identity reinvention. The third step is to create a resilience framework map. This matters because not everyone has the same map. We're all unique. It is not a one-size-fits-all, and it's a personalized framework that helps people see where they're depleted versus where they're strong. Remember the holistic wealth mindset and decision-making framework? What is depleting me? What is filling up my holistic wealth bank account? So that's a framework, and that's a resilience framework. And now we're going to do a worksheet, and the worksheet will be available in the resources section in the links provided in this episode. And it's basically a simple 4-quadrant map with the domains of biological, which is your nervous system, sleep, rest, breath work, and nourishment, psychological, which is mindset, meaning, optimism, emotional regulation, identity, who am I becoming, roles, self-definition and future self, and collective, community and systems. What are my support networks? So we are going to leave you with a visual worksheet template for the resilience framework map that you can download from the Institute on Holistic Wealth website. And also there is the Holistic Wealth Reset checklist. So you can do both if you want, download both. But the Institute has the Holistic Healing Certification Program as well as the Certified Holistic Wealth Coaching and Consultant Program, which are also really good for people experiencing disruption, no matter how much the disruption is. So thank you so much for joining us for this short, quick, sweet episode. Replay it 10, 15 times if you need. Share it with your network. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you download your podcast episodes from. And have a great week, everyone. Lots of love, lots of holistic wealth to you all.
The Holistic Wealth Podcast with Keisha Blair is brought to you by... Have you joined the Institute on Holistic Wealth? If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Choose your membership plan at the Institute on Holistic Wealth/memberships to join. As a member, you'll get access to free worksheets, advice, coaching, and an intentional design workshop. As you start to live a more holistically wealthy lifestyle, you'll want to stay for a very long time. So go to Institute on Holistic Wealth/memberships to join. If you haven't read the book yet, pick up a copy of the award-winning best-selling Holistic Wealth 36 Life Lessons to help you recover from disruption, find your life purpose, and achieve financial freedom.